We discuss last night's and this afternoon's breaking developments surrounding Lewis Hall, as this afternoon we have accepted an initial bid from Newcastle to sell him. The question right now is, are we making the right decision? In today's video, I'll break down the news. I have on a special guest to give us some more insight behind this potential sale, and of course, I give my conclusions at the end. So where do you guys fall on this debate right now? Make sure to share your thoughts and opinions, and of course, hit that like button as well too. Now, as reported by The Telegraph from Sam Wallace, David Ornstein, plus many big journalists, we have accepted an initial fixed fee of £28 million plus a further 7 million in add-ons to sell Lewis Hall to Newcastle. Now, over the past few days, this story has been intensifying as Newcastle hoped to sign Lewis Hall and did see CFCParee as a backup option. Due to their interest and their big bid, it seems that the club have been tempted to cash in on Lewis Hall. Lewis Hall is set to have his medical this week with Newcastle. We saw the confirmation of his loan move to Crystal Palace, and he was even spotted in Crystal Palace's new kit for this season, getting ready to be announced. And we learned that this was an executive decision that was made by Bedad Eghbali. This is why Lewis Hall is now being sold. That's all the latest news, but before I move on to announcing the guest to provide some more insight behind how exactly we found ourselves in this situation, quick plug, but right now, you can buy the new 23-24 home kit and goalkeeper kit for this season. But if you guys want to buy the sponsorless shirts, you must be quick because these are selling out like crazy. And I have to say personally, the goalkeeper kit this season is one of the best kits this season throughout any club, right? Obviously, I don't know what it says about maybe like attacking players coming in on goal now, because I thought normally bright colours really puts them off, but in terms of the drip and the design and the source, maybe they could be distracted by how beautiful the kits and designs are. So my friends, if you guys want to act quick before everything is out, you'll find links below in the description and in the card above where you get direct links to the site. Use my discount code NINI10 to get 10% off at checkout for your final order. So my friends, for this next part of the video, obviously how exactly have we found ourselves in this situation where we are now set to sell Lewis Hall? So there's no better person to bring on other than CFCParee from the Chelsea Sport. How you doing, man?
I'm really good, thank you. How are you?
After this news, I can't lie, it's taken me by surprise, and yeah, getting straight into things. How exactly has these set of events led up to this moment now?
Yeah, I think it's a really important discussion to have, because I think what you're going to get in the next few days from the fans and from the media is that, oh, Lewis Hall wanted to leave Chelsea, and so that's why we're doing the sale. I'd say that there are sort of two parts of it which could maybe help other people who do believe that look a bit differently. The first one being, normally if sort of an academy player, a player has, who's come through your ranks for the last 10, 15 years, Lewis Hall's been here since a little kid. If they want to leave, there's normally a very good reason why. And I think that's the context which needs to be put into place. So what's really interesting is, but I think what's more interesting is that Chelsea literally got him to agree to sign a 6+1 year contract last week. And he has put pen to paper. We've had that confirmed by quite a few journalists now. So the fact that we got him to sign him out, we were meant to send him out to Crystal Palace on loan, but things have changed, means that, okay, he did see some sort of pathway initially, as he did agree a lengthy contract. The 30 million or whatsoever we're going to get now is really worth it when, as we saw with Levi Colwill, if you play him for a year, Levi's value pretty much increased by double or triple amount. I think the same thing could happen with Lewis Hall, and the power is in the club's hands.
Now, one question I'm hoping to get more context on. Lewis Hall already had 3 years on his existing deal. He recently signed a 6+1 year extension. What was the plan behind that? Was that to boost his value for a sale, or did we make like a late last minute decision to decide to sell him when originally we had plans to keep him?
I think it is definitely more of the latter of what you said. I mean, I was told by a good friend who knew Lewis said that the club were really only allowing him to go on Palace on loan if he signed the lengthy contract, and sort of, I don't want to say reluctantly, because he always had the choice not to, but he decided to sign the 6+1 because he just was desperate for game time this season. And the Palace loan was meant to happen. That was pretty much in agreement, and I think this Newcastle interest has just come in really late, and it sort of swayed Lewis's decision. Obviously, we know his family sort of supports Newcastle. They're from Newcastle. It's a massive move for him in that sense, and he's going to be playing Champions League football. Like, that's a massive thing, and he's going to be getting minutes. Okay, I do think a lot of those minutes will be at left back for Newcastle this season, but I think at that point, the way his Chelsea sort of pre-season went, he was just happy to get minutes anywhere this season, and he's shown his Premier League quality, so I think he's going to have a really good time at Newcastle.
Do you think we could expect Cobham to be used now as kind of like a factory to boost book values due to FFP profit?
Yeah, I mean, I think by the looks of things, it's heading that way, which is a shame, because one of the first things which sort of Todd Bowley and the ownership came in, when they came in, they was talking about how strong the academy is, how they want to integrate it. And I saw the Reece James signing a new contract as a really big positive. I saw Levi Colwill signing a new contract a few weeks ago as a massive positive. And then I sort of shifted my thinking towards, okay, they're very happy to keep the Cobham players who they think are going to be regular starters, and instead of keeping Cobham players as squad players, which I think they should be doing, they're actually happier to sell them on and buy squad players, because, well, maybe it's the amortization reasons where it sort of splits out each year. But what's interesting is I think the club and Pochettino rate Hall really highly. And I actually think they see them as someone like Reece James, like Levi Colwill, who could have started week in, week out in a few years down the line. And yet they were happy to take the 30 mil profit this year, rather than either getting about 60 to 70 next year after one loan, or ideally using him in the lineup and squad. We're going to see the effects of maybe in 5 to 10 years time. It's not something we're going to see in the next few years, but maybe you're going to start seeing players leaving our academy age groups at the age of 12 or 13, and that lag effect won't come in until a few years time.
And I guess it'll be very interesting questions around the validity behind this Project 2030, because the original plan was to create like a pathway where Cobham is filling in squad roles and hopefully finding first team stars as well too. But currently, based on the amount of young talent we are signing, it seems like that project might be in question now.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what's really interesting is, compared to the last ownership, I think it's very clear that this new ownership are really happy to use sort of younger players, and that's sort of the direction we're going in. But what is baffling is that we're not looking inwards enough, and Chelsea's academy is by far one of the best in the world. It's definitely one of the most rated in the world, and anyone in the academy game knows that. So it's really good that we're looking at younger talent, we're looking to play them. Pochettino's a great manager for young players to develop, but we're looking a lot on the outside rather than the inside. And Lewis Hall showed last season that if you look in the inside, if you choose the right players, put them in the right system and give them a good environment, they're going to thrive. I mean, Lewis Hall, I've said this a few times, and I think it's a really interesting point, that Lewis Hall was a great player in our under-21s, but in no way, shape or form was he like a standout player. He was a very good player. He was good and he impressed, but he was in no way standout. And look at the impact he had in the Chelsea team last year. So there are other players who can do a similar job. And yeah, I don't think we're looking in-house as much, but that's something to keep an eye on.
Obviously, thank you to CFCParee for coming on to share his insight. And of course, you guys can find all this great work alongside his team on Chelsea Sport. There will be links provided below in the description, and as you guys can see on screen too, links are on screen. So now we move on, and I want to discuss the pros and cons behind allowing a Lewis Hall to leave, and I want to discuss either side, because this is not a black or white conversation. This is a grey area conversation, but let's start with pros first. Now, to see things from a purely business point of view, all emotions aside, Lewis Hall has played 12 games at the first team level, and if you're set to receive around £35 million or even potentially more for a player that's played this little game time, is it a surprise that the boards couldn't turn this opportunity down? Because this is guaranteed profit. This is guaranteed money. And breaking the British record twice in the space of 12 months, that does come with consequences. We've known for a long time in press reports that we are very open to opportunistic sales. Hence why the club have been open to sales like Gallagher, even Ian Matson, Trevor Chalobah, because whoever commands the most transfer value, we will look into selling them. And that's how the plan's always been. To look at the reality of the situation too, you'd imagine that there's some reluctance behind the sale of Lewis Hall, because he is highly rated. We all know that. But in a window where you still haven't sold Lukaku, who's on massive wages, we don't know yet whether he'll sign for Juventus. And if he does leave, realistically, it could be another loan spell at this point in time. That, alongside not receiving big money for players like Hakim Ziyech and others, is going to force you to go back to the drawing boards and have to be a bit creative now in terms of how you increase your profit values, of course, the falling guidelines and limits with FFP. And as we know, academy grads represent pure accounting profit when considering FFP. And in a sense, if you're set to receive around, let's say, 30 million for an academy player, technically, theoretically, you could spend 4 to 5 times that value on signing players in the market. The transfer window is set to end in less than 2 weeks' time. And missing out on Champions League football last season, of course, this has paid the biggest price. And it probably explains why we are more open now to selling a Lewis Hall compared to loaning him out originally to a Crystal Palace. On top of this too, the club may feel we are stacked at left back right now. Of course, Cucurella, there's no real market for him, and it doesn't represent any good business value to let him go out on loan. Obviously, Ben Chilwell is our vice captain. Ian Maatson remains, and behind the scenes we have Zach Sturridge and we have Samuel Smith, who we just signed from Everton, who are more specialised guys playing as left backs. Lewis Hall ideally wants to play in midfield, but even in midfield we are absolutely stacked for the next few years now. And after he got basically no game time during pre-season, the writing was kind of on the wall for his future at this football club. And it does raise this question, but is Cobham now seen as a profit factory? Because it's kind of like our get out of jail free cards. For all the times we've been misguided with our money, maybe signing a Cucurella, for example, instead of opening up a position for a Lewis Hall to take that role, we are producing talents in our academy that can command 8-figure fees. But it does raise interesting questions about the long-term viability of Cobham grads finding first team minutes at our football club. Now, we'd like to hope that your Colwells and Reece James and the elite tier talents will always have places in this team, right? But, Lewis Hall, Colwell, Reece James, Mason Mount, and many of these guys all did similar things in terms of winning, the Academy Player of the Year. And most times when you win that, everyone who's won that consecutively recently has gone on to become super talents who have been sold for big time money. Or they're doing big things in their career now. So it gets you thinking on a bare minimum level, should the Academy Player of the Years not at least have pathways into the first team? Because traditionally over many consecutive years, they always end up living up to the goods and their potential. And the only fear now is that we're seeing younger and younger players now feeling disillusioned and wanting to leave us. I mean, recently, your Musialas, Illing Juniors, Livramentos, Guys, Gilmours, Lampteys, etc. They feel like their careers will be serviced better elsewhere now, and can you really blame them when not only is there amazing first team players, but we're also more open now to replacing squad positions in the market instead of using what we're growing and building at this football club. And to continue on by discussing the cons, I think another side to the game that we all feel but don't really include in our arguments and debates is the emotional investment in the game. I mean, this is why we're all watching content on YouTube, because of course, we love the game, we have ties to that. And when you realize that more decisions at this club are maybe more business prioritized compared to football prioritized, how can you feel that connection as much maybe to maybe a younger guy coming through your club when business will be placed above everything else? Now, let's be serious. Hopefully and most likely we will benefit on the field with silverware due to these business decisions. A part of me would like to think that these are the natural growing pains and completely revamping and changing a football club overnight. But we keep hearing from consecutive ownership now and figures at the top that Cobham is a priority. However, it doesn't seem to be a priority on the field and tends to be more of a priority in terms of saving us by making money. And in the long term, if this issue keeps compounding and compounding and compounding, we could pay the price one day, because we're fortunate that we can produce Reece James and Levi Coles, but with the next one that comes through, what if he then decides in a few years' time, this is not the club for me, and then we pay the price? It's not been the first time that happens, but my friends, to end things on a more positive note, I actually feel like this is the most beneficial move for Lewis Hall. As I said earlier, he has a lot of competition at left back in midfield, and there's no clear pathway for him. And one thing that used to really disappoint me the most is that with all our super talents that we used to have, the career maps we built for these players were non-existent. And I feel like so many of these younger players would have had better careers if their potential was tapped a lot earlier during those like formative years between 17 to 21 years old. So at least Lewis Hall, of course, is signing for a club that his family have always supported. They play Champions League football. He's getting access to top flight minutes at a teenage year. And normally, the players who are fortunate enough to have access to minutes like this, they tend to have the better careers over time due to getting exposure at a very early age. And for most of the young guys we're even signing, even using like Casadio as an example, how close is he now to becoming a first team player for us? And maybe if he remained at Inter Milan, would his career not be at a similar place right now if he got loan moves to Serie A clubs instead? Or maybe waited for opportunities at Inter Milan. So in that sense, Lewis Hall now is completely in control of his career and working under Eddie Howe, playing the football they play, the talents alongside Livramento. My only fear is that, Newcastle will become extra competition at the top right now. They're building for the now and for the future too. And as they keep getting more exposure to European football, they're allowed to spend more and more money in the market. And who knows how they're going to be now in 1 to 3 years. So my friends, that is the end for today's video. As I said, share your thoughts and opinions. Let's get a wide variety of debates on this matter. I am Nini FC. This is BlueLionsTV. I'll catch you guys later with some more videos. Cool.